At 6:19 local time, the surface search radar gives a single sweep, then another. A new contact appears off the starboard bow. There is no slow buildup, no gradual shape forming on the display, no warning that anyone can point to afterward. One moment the screen is clear, and the next, a hard track is moving toward the bridge. No one says anything at first. The officer of the deck studies the bearing as it settles into place. 271. The range is shrinking, and it is shrinking faster than it should. Down in the operations center, the tracker calls it out in a flat, controlled voice. New surface contact. Course change detected. Closing speed increasing. The American ship holds steady at 18 knots. The engines are smooth. The wake is clean. Everything about her movement says routine transit. But the other vessel does not move like routine traffic. At 0621, the unknown ship alters 5 degrees to port. It is a small adjustment on paper, barely anything to the eye. But at sea, small changes can carry a very clear message. That single shift places it on an intercept line. The closest point of approach recalculates automatically. 1.9 nautical miles. Too close to dismiss as chance. The bridge-to-bridge radio comes alive. Unidentified surface vessel, this is a United States Navy ship operating in international waters. State your intentions. Static answers. Nothing more. High-resolution optics rotate forward and lock onto the contact. Steel hull, gray paint, a military profile. Not a commercial vessel, not a fishing boat, not something lost or drifting. Then the contact accelerates. 22 knots. Its bow wave sharpens. A darker trail of exhaust appears behind the stack. In the operations center, the ship stays quiet on emissions control. Passive only. Everything observed, everything logged, nothing broadcast unnecessarily. As the vessel closes, the tactical display begins filling in the details. Hull shape, profile, deck layout. The form matches a Russian Navy surface vessel. No flag raised, no signal lights, no acknowledgement over radio, just speed, angle, and intent. On the bridge, the captain steps forward, eyes fixed on the horizon. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. Maintain course. Maintain speed. It is not a gesture of pride. It is procedure. It is discipline. At 0624, the closest point of approach drops again, 1.4 nautical miles. The Russian vessel angles slightly, just enough to keep the pressure on. The two ships now run nearly parallel, but far too close for comfort. Another hail goes out, steady and professional. Same message. Same tone. Still no answer. Below decks, the ship hums with controlled readiness. Precision systems remain inactive, but the forward deck mount shifts a few degrees. Not enough to provoke. Just enough to be noticed. The cameras zoom tighter. Figures are visible on the Russian deck. Helmets, movement, crew at their stations. This is not drift. This is not misunderstanding. This is pressure. At 0627, the Russian ship surges to 25 knots. Closest point of approach, 1.1 nautical miles. Time to closest approach, 4 minutes. Inside the operations center, the watch supervisor marks the timeline. Every bearing change, every knot of speed, every second. Recorded, time-stamped, stored. Electronic support systems catch a brief signal from the Russian vessel. A low-power surface search sweep. They are looking back now. Measuring, confirming, checking how close they are. The captain gives a small nod. Log it. On the bridge wing, a lookout calls visual confirmation. The numbers say there is still distance between the ships, but the human eye says something else. The gap feels smaller than the instruments suggest. The sea is calm, which somehow makes it worse. No rough weather, no heavy swell, nothing to hide behind, nothing to blame. At 6:30, the Russian ship holds its line. No turn away, no slowdown, no acknowledgement. The space between the hulls shrinks into something physical. Steel moving beside steel, separated only by water, judgment, and restraint. Another calculation flashes across the display. The closest point of approach falls under 1 nautical mile. That is not a legal line, but it is a practical one. At that distance, there is no extra room. A wrong rudder input, a delayed reaction, a sudden swell, and the situation changes instantly. The captain gives the next order. Prepare airborne asset. Standby only, no launch, not yet. This is still pressure, not an open clash. The Russian bow cuts through the swell with force, throwing spray to the side. Its wake begins to overlap the American ship's track. One final hail goes out, shorter than the others. Russian naval vessel, you are conducting unsafe maneuvers. Alter course immediately. Silence. On the bridge, no one looks away. In the operations center, every eye stays on the plot. This is the point where mistakes happen, where seconds become reports, where a few meters can become an international incident. As the clock moves past 6:32, with the distance still tightening and neither ship giving way, one thing becomes clear. This is no longer just navigation, it is a test of nerve. At 0633 local time, the range slips below 1 nautical mile. The Russian ship does not turn out. It does not reduce speed. Instead, it settles just off the American ship's starboard quarter, close enough for optics to read hull markings, close enough for wake turbulence to begin crossing between them. This is no longer simple transit behavior. In the operations center, the tracker keeps his voice even, contact maintaining parallel course, speed steady at 25 knots. The American ship remains at 18. That difference matters. Every extra knot from the Russian vessel tightens the geometry. Every second without correction narrows the margin for error. On the bridge, the officer of the deck glances at the helmsman. The helmsman's hands are steady, heading locked. No evasive move, no signal of retreat. The Russian ship drifts about 10 meters closer, not enough to trigger every alarm, just enough to make the message unmistakable. Another number appears on the tactical display. Closest point of approach, 0.7 nautical miles. The number seems to hang in the air. Below decks, the ship remains in a controlled readiness posture. No alarms, no rushing footsteps, no dramatic announcements, only calm preparation. Long-range cameras track the Russian bridge wing. Officers are visible now, binoculars raised. They can see everything the Americans are doing, and what the Americans are doing is almost nothing. That is the point. The forward deck mount shifts again. Slow, deliberate. Not aimed in a dramatic way, simply aligned into a position that says the ship is awake. In the operations center, the electronic warfare console lights briefly. Another pulse from the Russian vessel. Short, low power. Surface search radar. They are measuring the space between the hulls, confirming closure. The captain steps closer to the chart table. Log all emissions. Continue recording. No one asks why. Everyone already knows. At 0636, the Russian ship nudges its bow inward. It is not a full turn. It is more subtle than that. A suggestion, a controlled convergence. The American ship does not respond. Between the two hulls, the water begins to churn. Wakes interfere. Pressure zones overlap in ways sailors and naval engineers understand too well. At this distance, physics matters as much as intention. One poor input, one unexpected roll, one delay, and steel meets steel. The bridge-to-bridge radio crackles again. Russian naval vessel, you are creating a collision hazard. Alter course. Still nothing. The silence is not empty. It is deliberate. In the operations center, a younger watchstander swallows hard. The supervisor does not look over. His eyes remain on the plot. This is where training takes control. Not emotion, not pride. Procedure. The ship's passive detection systems keep collecting. Frequency, strength, duration, direction. Every detail is cataloged. Then the Russian ship surges again, 27 knots. Its bow wave throws white water outward, and spray slaps against the side of the American hull. Distance falls toward half a nautical mile. At these speeds, reaction time is no longer measured in comfortable minutes. It is measured in seconds. The captain makes the next decision. Active visuals only. No radar. The high-definition optics sharpen further. Every seam, every railing, every visible figure on deck. On the Russian vessel, one sailor steps closer to the forward mount. He does not touch it. He does not operate it. He simply stands near it. That is enough. In the operations center, the contact classification updates in tone, if not in final certainty. Dangerous intent possible. Not confirmed. Trending. At 0639, the American ship's wake begins to influence the Russian hull. It is a side effect of size, displacement, speed, and proximity. The Russian vessel finally reacts, but not by backing away. Instead, it matches the lateral movement, riding the edge of the pressure zone. This is seamanship at its most dangerous. Two naval ships separated by a narrowing strip of water, neither yielding, both recording everything. The captain exhales slowly. Stand by to increase visible presence. No aggressive action. Outside, the sea stays calm. The sky remains clear. There is nothing left to blame except decisions. As the range hovers just above 500 meters and the Russian ship holds its line with a precision that borders on provocation, the situation reaches a point where there is no room for misunderstanding. This is not an accident unfolding. It is a test being applied, and the next move will decide whether it remains only that. At 0641 local time, the order comes quietly. Launch the helicopter. No alarms, no raised voices, no dramatic rush. On the flight deck, the MH-60 Seahawk begins to spin up as if it has been waiting for this moment from the beginning. Rotor wash rolls across the deck, scattering salt spray and loose droplets from the surface. The deck crew moves with practiced precision. No panic, no hesitation. This is not escalation. This is visibility. The helicopter lifts cleanly, banking low off the starboard side before settling at 200 feet above the waterline. It does not race toward the Russian ship. It does not crowd it. It paces it. In the operations center, the video feed comes alive. Forward-looking infrared, electro-optical zoom, stabilized imagery. The Russian vessel fills the screen. Hull number confirmed, superstructure profile matched, bridge windows occupied. The Seahawk enters a wide orbit. Close enough to be impossible to ignore. Far enough to remain professional. Its presence changes the geometry instantly. What had been a two-ship encounter is now three-dimensional. On the Russian deck, movement increases. Sailors turn upward, hands rise to shade eyes, binoculars come out. They see the aircraft. They understand what its presence means. The helicopter crew says nothing at first. No warning, no dramatic call, just the sound of rotors cutting through the morning air with cold mechanical rhythm. At 0643, the sensor operator tightens the frame. Heat signatures sharpen across the screen. Engines, exhaust vents, human figures, warm metal, open deck areas. Everything is recorded. Everything is time-stamped. Back on the American bridge, the Russian ship's speed begins to drop. 27 knots becomes 24. It is subtle, but it is there. The closest point of approach stabilizes. It is not yet widening, but it is no longer collapsing. The helicopter adjusts position slightly, sliding forward along the Russian ship's bow line. Low, visible, controlled. Then the green laser marker comes on. Not as an attack, not as a threat. A marker, a visual statement. The beam touches near the Russian bridge windows, steady and unmistakable. A message that needs no translation. Moments later, the helicopter transmits. Russian naval vessel. This is a United States Navy aircraft. You are operating in an unsafe manner. Your actions are being recorded. The message repeats in Russian. No threats, no shouting, no demands beyond safety, just fact. For the first time since the encounter began, the Russian vessel responds. A brief transmission, low volume, no emotion. United States aircraft, Russian Navy vessel conducting routine operations. Routine. The word sits there, thin and unconvincing. The Seahawk maintains its orbit. On deck, the Russian sailors step back from the forward mount. They do not run. They do not panic. They simply retreat by inches. At 0647, the Russian ship eases its helm. A fractional turn to starboard, barely visible on radar, impossible to miss in meaning. Closest point of approach widens to 0.9 nautical miles. The danger is not gone, but it has paused. In the operations center, the watch supervisor notes the shift. Contact altering course slightly, speed decreasing. The captain nods once. Maintain pressure. The Seahawk descends another 20 feet, its shadow sliding across the Russian deck. Cameras capture every reaction, every glance, every movement. This is restraint at work, pressure without provocation, presence without unnecessary force. At 0650, the Russian ship reduces speed again. 20 knots. Its wake shortens. The water between the hulls begins to calm. The parallel track loosens. It is not a full withdrawal, but it is no longer a push. The helicopter makes one final deliberate pass along the length of the Russian ship. The marker is off now. Sensors remain active. Every angle is captured. Every surface recorded. Then the Seahawk climbs, banks away, and holds station above the American ship. Mission complete. On the bridge, no one celebrates. There is nothing to celebrate. This was not a victory. It was a correction. At 0654, the Russian vessel holds its new course. Still close, still present, but no longer pressing. The immediate danger has passed. What remains is footage, logs, sensor data, and the quiet understanding that the encounter ended not because anyone overreacted, but because one side showed it was prepared to respond without losing control. At 0656 local time, the sea returns to a deceptive calm. The Russian ship remains on the starboard side, now opening the distance meter by meter instead of closing it. The change is measurable but fragile. At this range, intent can reverse faster than momentum. Inside the operations center, the plot stabilizes. The closest point of approach holds at 1.2 nautical miles. Safe on paper. Still serious in practice. The American ship maintains course and speed. No pursuit, no retreat. The helmsman keeps the rudder steady, eyes fixed on the repeater. Every correction is deliberate. Nothing is left to impulse. On the bridge, the captain watches the Russian ship through binoculars. The forward mount is unmanned now. Deck crew have pulled back toward the superstructure. These are signals, but signals can lie. Then the Russian radar goes quiet. No emissions, no sweeps. Silence at sea is not always reassurance. Sometimes it means de-escalation. Sometimes it means preparation. Professionals do not assume either one too quickly. In the operations center, the electronic warfare officer marks the change. All Russian emitters cold. The log records the time down to the second. The Seahawk remains overhead, higher now, flying a wide racetrack pattern. Its sensors stay active. The aircraft is no longer a message. It is insurance. At 0701, the Russian ship alters course again. This time, the turn is unmistakable. 5 degrees to starboard. Then 2 more. The parallel track breaks. Distance begins opening steadily, 1.5 nautical miles, then 1.8. On the bridge, no one reacts outwardly. The captain does not acknowledge the movement until the numbers confirm what the eye already suspects. They're turning out, the officer of the deck says quietly. No response comes back. The American ship does not mirror the maneuver. It holds its original heading. That matters. It refuses to turn the encounter into a chase. It refuses to make the moment look like a retreat. At sea, posture is part of the story. At 0704, the Russian vessel reduces speed to 16 knots. Its wake flattens. The water between the ships smooths out. The danger curve bends downward. In the operations center, the dangerous intent marker is downgraded, not removed. Downgraded. The distinction is intentional. This is how professionals end tense encounters. Slowly, carefully, with enough room to reverse if the situation changes. The Seahawk begins its descent toward the flight deck. Clearance is granted without ceremony. The aircraft does not hurry. Even now, pacing matters. As the helicopter settles back onto the deck, rotor wash fades and the ship suddenly feels quieter. The absence of noise almost seems louder than the sound that came before it. At 0708, the Russian ship is 3 nautical miles away. Still visible, still tracked, still relevant, but no longer applying pressure. The bridge-to-bridge radio remains silent on both sides. This time, the silence is mutual. Inside the operations center, sailors begin the careful review process. Video files are saved, sensor logs are backed up, radar tracks are preserved, every frame, every frequency, every bearing change. This is not simply paperwork, this is evidence. The captain leaves the bridge briefly, then returns moments later for one final look toward the horizon. His voice remains calm and controlled. Resume normal watch. No announcement of relief, no release of tension. Just a return to routine, and that routine feels earned. By 7:12, the Russian ship has altered course enough to pass astern. The closest point is now behind them. The encounter is functionally over, but its imprint remains. 2 naval ships met in open water. One pressed, one held. Neither side crossed the final line. The outcome was decided not by volume, not by dramatic gestures, and not by reckless movement. It was decided by discipline, by the refusal to overreact, and by the equal refusal to yield space that did not need to be yielded. This was the line. It was approached, it was tested, and it was not crossed. What follows is not escalation, it is documentation. Because at sea, one of the strongest moves is often the one that leaves nothing to argue about later. Every professional sailor on board understands that today's restraint can become tomorrow's leverage. At 0716 local time, the Russian ship slips beyond immediate tactical relevance. Still visible, still tracked, but no longer shaping the moment. On the American ship, nothing changes outwardly. Course and speed remain constant. The wake stays straight. The bridge posture remains neutral. That is not indifference. It is continuity. In the operations center, the final phase begins. Not celebration, not speculation. Accounting. Every system that transmitted is reviewed. Every system that stayed quiet is noted. Radar plots are replayed second by second. Optical footage is examined frame by frame. The brief low-power emissions from the Russian vessel are isolated and tagged. This is where the encounter truly ends, not when the distance opens, when the record is secured. The captain convenes a short, focused review on the bridge. No speeches, no dramatic opinions, just confirmation. Timeline accurate, logs complete, crew performance professional. The Russian ship continues on a divergent heading, now 5 nautical miles out. Its silhouette shrinks against the horizon. It is no longer imposing, no longer a hazard to navigation, no longer the center of the moment. But it is not forgotten. At sea, memory is institutional. By 0724, the encounter is formally closed in the watch log. The language is precise, neutral, and factual. Unsafe maneuvering by foreign naval vessel. No contact between ships, no exchange of force, nothing more is needed. Below decks, sailors return fully to routine. Maintenance resumes. Watch rotations normalize. The ship does not carry the tension forward. That too is training. On the flight deck, the Seahawk is secured. Blades folded, sensors cooling. Its mission is complete, but its footage will travel through secure channels into analysis rooms and briefings that may never be public. This is how leverage is built quietly. The Russian ship made its point. So did the American one. Only one of them now carries the complete record. At 0731, the officer of the deck scans the horizon one last time. No new contacts, no change in sea state. The ocean looks exactly as it did before the encounter began. That is always the illusion. The surface rarely shows what has shifted underneath. This was not a battle. It was not a dramatic showdown. It was a measurement. How close can you come? How much pressure can you apply? How disciplined is the response? Those questions were asked without words, and they were answered the same way. No warning shots, no alarms echoing through the ship, no public statement in the moment. But every professional Navy understands what happened. One ship tried to impose risk. The other absorbed that risk without losing control. That difference matters. By 0740, the Russian vessel is outside the immediate operating picture. Radar track maintained but downgraded. The sea lane ahead opens again. The American ship continues its transit as planned. Nothing was gained through force. Nothing was lost through restraint. And that is the point. Encounters like this rarely announce their outcomes. They do not always become public headlines. They leave behind logs, imagery, and a quiet recalibration of assumptions on both sides. The Russian crew will remember the distance, the American crew will remember the discipline, and somewhere far from that stretch of open water, analysts will replay the moment when pressure met procedure. And procedure held. At sea, power is not always proven by how loudly a ship acts. Sometimes it is proven by how little it has to.